The Coptic culture is found in Lower Egypt and is a remnant of early Christian traditions. Things like monastic life actually started within the Coptic tradition. David Hein talks with Geralda about what it means for our times.
Now, I've noticed in the exhibit that you have small models of the churches or the cloisters that were inhabited at that time and are to some degree being now dug up by archaeologists. Could you talk about those churches a little bit?
Yes, the Copts invented the monasticism, I think, the monastery, because there were some hermits. They were living in the desert, and because they were so holy and famous, people came to live around them. So it's a sort of paradox, you want to live as a hermit in the desert, but everyone is following you and building houses around the place you're living. And so very early in the 3rd, 4th century, they made rules for living together in such a place, and that's the beginning of a monastery. And there were hundreds of those places in Egypt. Now there are less, of course, but still there are thousands of monks and nuns in Egypt. And in the Wadi Natrun, 4 cloisters are still inhabited. And sometimes there are just a place where a hermit lived, but you have also places where the Holy Family came on the flight to Egypt. The Copts are very proud that Egypt is the only place outside Palestine where Jesus has lived. And so you can make the same tour. It's still a pilgrimage to go the same route, the same way the Holy Family went. And you can see the tree at Mataria, which split up so that Maria could lie in it. It's still in the cloister garden there.
Now, how long were the Holy Family living in Egypt? Do you know, or is there some mythology about that?
Oh, there must be. Jesus, when he came back and was in the temple, he was 8 or 10, but they must live there for some years. I don't know. There must be some mythology on it, but.
Could you then tell me the relationship between the icons that we see associated with the Coptic culture and their origins, perhaps?
Yes. Now, when you see Coptic icons, they are different from Byzantine icons, and you directly recognize them as different. And that's because in Egypt there was a large tradition from the Roman portraits, and before that from the Fayum portraits, the mummy portraits that were laid on the mummy. And you see the big eyes, if you have seen one Fayum portrait, you always see the big black eyes looking at the onlooker. And on Coptic icons you have the same thing. And they also use the same technique. It's a different technique from Byzantine painting. They used the ancient technique with encaustic wax and then on wood. And so also the icons are just the tradition from ancient times, and the gods changed, and they were not longer mummy portraits, but now they were the holy ones, the holy people. And an icon is something with a soul. It's the thing you can hug and kiss, and you can wear it with you. And so the Copts can all their belief and love for the belief, they can just give it to the icons, and so to the holy people.
Now there's a project that I see with several men who are in some way working on these icons. Could you tell me what's going on there?
Yes. Now, icons, just because they are hugged and kissed and because they were burning candles on it, are in bad condition mostly, because of course all those sweats and things are not very well for the paint. And there is a project, a Dutch project, and they restored those ancient, they are antique icons in the cloisters, but not only restored them, but they also teach the monks and also young people, young women especially, to be a restorer. So that it's not only that the Dutch give money to restore them, but give also a job and an education to Egyptian young people. And the picture, on the picture you see the very proud monks of the cloister of St. Anthony who are showing their just restored
exhibit. You see oftentimes a blending of the Roman, the Greek, the Egyptian. You see a different kind of cross here than the Christian. Could you explain that?
It's called Koptic cross, and why it is different, I don't know. They held this cross as their sign. It's not, for the Koptic, the cross is not the Passion of Christ. You never see, or almost never see, a crucifix in the Coptic church, because the cross is not the symbol of the pain and the passion of Christ, but it's a symbol of the resurrection. And they use always the cross with the even arms, and you can exactly see where the Copts were, where you see that cross, the Copts were. So the Celtic cross in Ireland is also the Coptic cross, because now in the 6th century or something, 7 Coptic monks went to Ireland to bring Christianity there, and they brought also their cross, and that's why the Irish have the same cross and not the Roman cross.
Now, the holy bread that the Coptic culture uses in their church, and the stamps are also unique and different. And is the sacrament and ritual different than that of the Roman church?
I don't know.
Okay, I don't know either.
I don't. The Coptic services are so long that they are just baking the bread during the service in the church. Just next to the church is the oven, and they bake the bread there, and then they stample it to make it holy, that it is baked in church. But it's not a hostie as in the Roman church. You can just eat it.
And today, how many Coptic Christians are there in Holland?
There are 4,000 believing Copts in Holland. There's one church in Amsterdam, and a second church is made in Utrecht, and there are parochs, 4 or 5 in Den Haag, Eindhoven, and all places. But Amsterdam is the most important place, and so everyone is coming every Sunday to the church on the Mosplein for the service of Father Arsanius, Abuna Arsanius, the religious leader of the Copts in Holland.
Now, you speak of religious leaders in the Coptic movement. Do they have a pope, or what is their hierarchy, please?
Yes, they have a pope. I told you that in the 4th century there was a conflict between Alexandria and Byzantium and Rome. And so, of course, it was a power play, and Alexandria lost, and they just were kicked out of the church. And then the Patriarch of Alexandria, who was of the same rank, of course, as the Patriarch of Rome and the Patriarch of Byzantium, he was the leader of those Coptic Orthodox people, and he is the Pope now. So we have now Pope Shenouda III, the 117th follower of Saint Marcus. And he's a patriarch from Alexandria. And after that schisma, which was in 351, for 1600 years there was no contact between Alexandria and Rome. And it was only in 1982 that the Roman Pope received the Alexandrian Pope. But he's called Pope. Yes.
I was recently in Kerala, which is a southern state in India, and they have a Syrian Christian community that traces their origin to St. Thomas in the year 52, I believe. Could there be any connection between the Syrian group and the Koptic Egyptians?
Yes, I think so, because St. Thomas was a Copt, and you are speaking, of course, of Roman times, and in those times there was much trade between the east coast of Egypt, of Africa, and the west coast of India. That was a Roman tradeway, and and of course the way to Syria was also very easy from Egypt, and we have in Egypt the Deir al-Surian, which means the cloister of the Syrians, because also there were Syrian monks. So I think there will be those early times of Christianity. Syrians came to Egypt, Egypt came to Syria, and they went to India. It was not so difficult to come in India on that moment.
Now, getting back to the textiles, which are rightfully a proud part of the collection at this museum, could you explain a little bit about the restoration process that you do here?
Yes, we didn't do here because it's very specialized work, and so we hired some ladies who are specialized in it, and they did it in their homes, at their ateliers. But yeah, you have some textiles. It's very fragile. It's because the dirt make it hard, and so it can break, and so they first lay it in water, demineralized water, and you know it's just like a tea bag, because you see all the dirt you see streaming out it, and so they're just changing the water very slowly, because it may not break in the water, and then when the water stays clean, they dry it, and they pin it on with those butterfly pins on small planks, and so that it cannot become smaller when it dries. You know, it cannot crimp. I don't know if this is an English word, but and when it is dry, then they just made all the threads in the right place, you know, with little pins. They just make it in the right model again, and then they stitch it on a new textile so that you can handle it. And the new textile, it can be linen, but then you can't see the backside of the textile, and just on the backside you see all the details of weaving. Of course, there are all the loose threads and things. And so they make, when they do it on linen, they make always a little window in it so that you can see the backside of the ancient textile. But the other possibility is that you do it between crepeline. Crepeline is a sort of like your nylon panties, and you can do it between two sheets then, and you can see the backside and the front side very good. But with crepeline you have always those little, some misty thing on the weave, because on the textile, because there is something on it. But that is so, in short, the technique of. And now we have them all, you know, on those modern textiles. You can just pick them up, you can turn them, you can study them without touching the ancient textile.
Now, how old are the majority of these textiles, and how do you date them?
Yeah, the dating is very difficult, because the Copts are so traditional that for centuries they use the same motifs and the same techniques. But most of them are so from the 5th century AD. We have some older and there are some newer, but you can say all the Coptic textiles in the world are between 200 and 1,000. That's what you call Coptic. And when you want to see when you want to give a date to them, now in the first century, so 200 until 500, they are very Greco-Roman to see, with normal people to see, and beautiful animals and birds. And then you see the Byzantine style, so it will become more stylistic. So the eyes become bigger. You not always see the faces very well. And in the last centuries, then the Arabs were very powerful, of course, and it was forbidden, or it is forbidden for the Islam to make pictures of people, of men. So then you see less people depicted and more from those arabesque patterns, more geometric patterns. So that's what you can say. But it's very difficult to date. And when you read a book, every book says something else.
One other thing that I wanted to ask about, and that is, in the exhibit here you have some stone sculptures of one sort or another, the bird up there and some of those. Could you tell me a little about the origin of those?
The stone sculptures are, you have two kinds. The most are gravestones, and then you see also ancient traditions with the shell and the pillars, and in Roman times there was God between them, and now we have the cross standing between the pillars, and the other is the ornaments of the cloisters, because they were very poor and they were very ascetic, but they adorned their cloisters and the churches. So the most beautiful things on this exhibition are from, of course, out religious context, and that are the ornaments, the stone ornaments, but they are also very Egyptic. We have a beautiful crocodile eating a fish, and you know the fish is a Christian symbol, because the Greek word for fish, ichthys, means the letters is acrostigon of Jesus Christos Theohuios Soter, dus Jesus Christ, the Son of God, the Savior. But not every fish is an ichthys. So when the crocodile is eating a fish, that's possible in a Christian cloister. On this textile you see a beautiful story. At the left you see Anna, the mother of Maria, standing, and she has the little Maria before her. And at the right you see the door of the temple with the high priest Zacharias standing in it. And the story goes like this. Anna and Joachim brought Maria when she was 3 years old to the temple. And when they saw that the little girl was able to climb all alone the stairs of the big temple, they left her there to serve the Lord. And that's what people did with little girls in Egypt in that time. So they brought them to the temple, and it was a test if they already could climb a chair all alone.